it's Mo. You might remember that I was recently doing a Read What You Own challenge. This challenge was started in mid to late 2022 by Ollie from Criminolly, and the whole idea was to pick a number of books that you wanted to read off of your own shelf before you acquired any other books. So this could be your owned physical shelf, your digital shelf, audiobooks that you had on backlog, anything like that. And each person picked their own level of participation. So some people picked as low as 10 or 25 books, and Ollie picked 100 books. Some people even picked 500 books that they wanted to read before they acquired new books. Each person who participated or who has been participating made up their own rules and caveats and addendum to the rules. So lots of people said that if books were gifted to them, or if they stumbled upon books, or if they got ARCs, those books didn't count against their Read What You Own challenge. I decided to participate in the 25 book category, so I wanted to read 25 of my own owned physical books before acquiring new books. But since I don't buy any new books, since I only get books secondhand, just like basically everything else in my life as well, I knew that I still needed to be able to pick up books from little free libraries or from book sales and things like that. But one of the things that I really tried to do was be very specific about which books I picked up, not just pick up random books, to avoid book sales, to avoid used bookstores, and try to pick up a very minimum amount of books. I started my challenge on December 24th, and I got to February 23rd, so just about 2 months, before I totally failed this project. So I did do a earlier check-in for my Read What You Own project, which I will leave listed down below, and I was pretty confident at that point that I was going to be able to read 25 of my own owned books before acquiring, like en masse, a lot of other books. One of the rules that I had set for myself was that if I did acquire some books by purchasing them as opposed to foraging them, I would have to add to my total. So that did happen once, and I bought 2 books, so I added 2 books to my total. So I actually read 21 out of 25 books, but I failed the challenge by 6 books if you don't count those ones that I substituted in there. So I wanted to come on here and just talk about why I failed and what my plan going forward was. When I failed the project in February, I really thought I was just going to get back on the horse. It was almost my birthday, so I was going to wait until after my birthday book buying trip, which is when I usually go to a few used bookstores and buy some used books as birthday gifts to myself. It's also a way for me to support used bookstores that I love in the area, because I don't often go to used bookstores. I get the majority of my books from little free libraries, library sales, or other community book sales. So even going to a used bookstore is a little bit rare for me. I definitely don't go to a used bookstore every month or even every other month. But in February, I like to do so that I can support and so that I get a little treat around my birthday. At that time, I really was thinking after I went on those trips, I would just continue on, start again, start another 25 book challenge to myself. But the more time passed and the more I thought about it, the more unrealistic it seemed for me to really keep participating in this Read What You Own challenge. I still definitely really want to read what I own, and I want to read off of my own shelves, but it was really difficult for me not to go at all to thrift stores, and in those 2 months I had really avoided going to thrift stores because thrift stores is definitely a place that I do buy used books, but I also buy everything else in thrift stores too. So recently I needed to buy new pants, and I was avoiding going to thrift stores to buy new pants, which I need, because I didn't want to buy used books, which I don't need. So it was a really tough balance for me to strike, and I think it's unrealistic for me to restrict myself when I'm already so restricted, because I choose not to just go out and buy things new. A couple of things that I did learn from this challenge and I want to take away is that one of the ways that I really achieved reading my own books was to read my own books on audio when I read audiobooks. Usually I have at least one physical book, sometimes two on the go. I'll be reading my main physical book, but then I'll also maybe have a book of poetry or a short story collection on the go as well. And then I always have at least one audiobook on the go. So the audiobooks that I used to choose before this challenge were ones that I didn't own, and it was a way for me to read newer titles, new releases, or things that I wanted to read but I hadn't yet found secondhand. During this challenge, I made a rule that I had to read one owned audiobook for every unowned audiobook. So I would read one of my own physical books on audio, and then I would get the opportunity to read an audiobook that I didn't own physically. And that really worked for me, and that was a way that I was able to really pare down my TBR as I was going, and I really enjoyed that. So that's something that I'm definitely going to be taking forward. Another thing that I'm going to be taking forward, or I hope to take forward, I haven't quite done it yet, is to not just grab every cool book that comes my way when I see them, when I'm foraging, or when I'm shopping used. So it's often been my practice, especially in 2022, if I see a book that I'm even mildly interested in, if I see a book that I've heard someone mention, if I see a book that looks vaguely interesting, I will grab it, whether that's at a little free library, a library sale, or a used bookstore. Because when am I going to get the chance to get that again? And something that the Read What You Own challenge kind of hammered into my head was that I can always find that book again used. There's no shortage of used books. Will it be slightly more difficult to find in the future? Maybe, but maybe not. I have to keep telling myself that it is okay to leave books that you're only mildly interested behind. So what I've tried to do since stopping the Read What You Own project and since going back to just buying books at book sales or finding books in little free libraries is to be more selective about the books that I've chosen. Now, have I done this 100%? No, but it is something that I'm going to strive for more starting now. Another lesson that I learned from the Read What You Own project also is not to purchase off of online used bookstores. So towards the end of 2022, I really got in the habit of like, oh, I just want this book, I'll just go on Thrift Books and I'll find it, or I'll go on a used bookstore online and find it. And that is a possibility, and it kind of goes with my last point, whereas like if I see a book and I pass it up, but then I really, really want it, I can just get it online used. There's lots of outlets to do that, and a lot of times you can find the book you're looking for a fairly cheap price. But what I really enjoyed during my 2-month Read What You Own challenge, and since then, because I still haven't bought any used books online, is to just cut that aspect out. I find either forage or purchase used enough books in my life. I have more books than I can read in several years, so I don't need to be going online to find books. When I was doing that in 2022, I was looking for specific books to go with maybe some video projects I was doing, and if that came up again in the future, I would consider purchasing online used, but I have enough right now that I wouldn't need to do that for the rest of 2023 and probably beyond. So that's where I stand with my Read What You Own. I did fail spectacularly, I feel, on that challenge. I picked a fairly low amount of books to try and read, and I wasn't able to do it before I purchased more books. I am scrapping my future rounds of Read What You Own. This will probably be the last Read What You Own update, but I learned some lessons from it, and I do feel like I came away from the challenge with more knowledge of how I purchase books or how I acquire books and what I want to do in the future. I also did come away with some challenges to continue, like not picking up every book that I see, passing up books that I'm less interested in, and finding them perhaps in the future. I did want to mention just a couple of very small stats. So I did read 21 out of my 25 book challenge, and since stopping that challenge and potentially restarting it but not actually restarting it, I've read 15 of my owned books. So I'm still on a good trajectory. From the 23rd of February to now we're in very early April, I did read 15 of my own books. So I am still on a good trajectory towards reading my own TBR. I do want to point out though that in January and February of 2022, I acquired 39 books between those 2 months. And in January and February of 2023, I acquired 55 books. So even though I was doing a Read What You Own challenge, and even though I was trying to read my own physical TBR, and even though I wasn't purchasing books from thrift stores, and I wasn't purchasing books online, and I wasn't going to used bookstores as much as possible or library sales, I still acquired way more books in the first 2 months of 2023 than I did in 2022. In March of 2022, I acquired 26 books, and in March of 2023, I acquired 47 books. So I'm not acquiring less books overall year to year, but hopefully, like I said, following the kind of ideas and information that I gathered during my Read What You Own, this will slacken over the coming months. In April, I actually have 6 or 7 book sales that I looked up that I could go to, and I decided before making this video that I was not going to go to the majority of them because I really, although I love going to book sales and although I love exploring New Jersey through going to book sales, I really don't need to be acquiring so many books. And if I go to a book sale, I'm going to acquire lots of books, even if I'm only getting ones that I'm super interested in. So that was my Read What You Own challenge finale. In 2022, I was doing book hauls because I was keeping track of the books that I acquired all that year. I'm still keeping track of every book that I acquire in 2023. I still have spreadsheets, and you'll still definitely see a RAB spreadsheet update probably in the middle of the year and at the end of the year, but I'm no longer doing hauls. Hauls were something that I didn't like to do anyway, but I did want to show you a few books that I recently got that are pretty cool. So the last book that I acquired, which was just a few days ago, is The Hound of the Baskervilles by Arthur Conan Doyle, and I got this one just because it is vintage and it is a great old cover. So this book I've read many times before, and it's not going to be going on my physical TBR, it is going to be going in my vintage book collection. At a used book sale in Princeton, New Jersey, I got The Lamplighters by Emma Stonix. This book was on my 21 books I found out about in 2021 that I wanted to read in 2022 list, so I'm excited to have another book to get me closer to completing that project. I do not love the cover of this one, but I am super excited to read it. A book that I probably shouldn't have picked up but was at Goodwill was Survive the Night by Riley Sager. This one is definitely a polarizing one of Riley Sager's, and I've only read one Riley Sager before, which I thought was okay. But now I have this one and one more of his to try. At a little free library in Asbury Park, New Jersey, I recently found The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang. This is a YA graphic novel, and I saw a lot of people reading this a couple years ago on BookTube. It looks really cute. It wasn't one that I was super interested in, so maybe I shouldn't have picked it up, but being a graphic novel, it'll be quick to get through. I'm hoping to read this one in May for the Asian Readathon. And last month in March, I read my first ton of French, so when I saw The Witch Elm at Salvation Army, I decided to pick it up. This is one of her standalone novels. I'm excited to read more of her writing because I loved In the Woods, which was the first of the Dublin Murder Squad books, and I thought it was so great. Also at the Princeton book sale, I found Mary Roberts Reinhardt's The Yellow Room. I love Mary Roberts Reinhardt. She's often considered the American Agatha Christie. I've only read 3 of her books before. I'm always excited to find another one. I recently went to Brooklyn, New York, and while I was there, of course, I did some used book shopping at several used bookstores in the area. I got all books that were on my want to read list, so I feel good about the decisions that I made. I got Dennis Johnson's Train Dreams. This is a very short novella. I've never read any Dennis Johnson, but I've heard really good things about this one. I got In the House in the Dark of the Woods by Laird Hunt. This is a spooky haunted house novella. I got Paradise by Fernanda Melchor. This is a translated work that was, I think, longlisted for the International Booker last year. I got Elsewhere by Alexis Shaikin. This is Cli-Fi, I think. And I Got the Door by Magda Szabo. This is another translated work and is really well renowned. I've heard nothing but good things, and of course it's a very cute NYRB edition. That is my wrap up, my finale for my Read What You Own challenge. Let me know if you were participating in the Read What You Own challenge this year. Let me know how you're doing on it, and if you failed like me or if you continued, and let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned here. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!